and welcome to UC Today. My name is Kieran Devlin. In today's session, we're exploring unified communications and contact center convergence and how business leaders can change the game of their communications by joining the UC and CC revolution. I am delighted to be joined by Bill Dellara, Chief Product Officer at VOSS. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Karen. Always good to chat about these things.
Before we explore how the UC and CC convergence can change the game for businesses, can you please tell us a little about yourself, Bill, and your VOSS journey?
Yeah, sure. I'm Bill Dellara. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at VOSS. Been here for, let's say, 20 years and in the industry a bit longer. And it's been an exciting time, seeing a lot of changes over the years from all the on-prem telephony and great to see some of the convergence with contact center and kind of stepping into that domain and seeing more of it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that evolves and we'll chat about that here today.
Let's get started just with that, Bill. I guess looking from a high level perspective, many enterprises today are still juggling siloed UC and contact center systems, often leading to unnecessary complexity, high costs, poor user experiences. Can you please paint a picture of what that fragmented environment typically looks like and why it's just no longer sustainable?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've definitely seen this as a kind of segmented market, for quite a while. As I say, I've got a lot of background in the UC side, and contact center has always been this other silo, this other scary domain that other people worry about. But yeah, I mean, that's just not, sustainable as you say. I mean, the reality is you're seeing, even if they're with the same vendor for UC and contact center, that, there's duplication of services, duplication of teams, resources, just a lot of that, which obviously leads to higher cost, a lot more operational pain, and all those elements that go with that. But even looking externally at what that, contact center experience is delivering, I mean, it's ultimately delivering a subpar, user experience or employee experience internally or customer experience externally. And I think, we're seeing that change in the market in terms of what people expect as a customer or even as an employee these days. And I think one of the biggest things is there's a fear of disruption, right? If something's working, nobody kind of knows what it does, how it works, why it was done that way. And they're really, kind of because it's so central to the business, kind of afraid to deal with it or touch it. And I think that leads to even more fragmentation, as we saw with COVID and stuff, where you incorporate maybe cloud contact centers so that you can scale, but still leaving the legacy stuff behind. And then even within the contact center, you end up with multiple vendors and segmentation. So, I think that's really the kind of mess, if you will, that people are grappling with. And like I said, the modern demands of just employees and customers are really getting us to the point now where you can't no longer justify why you're living in that world, and you have to kind of move past that, find a more manageable, way of delivering these experiences. And I think with what we've seen with the UC stuff kind of maturing and some of the cloud services, it's providing a path out.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the key word there for me is experience and the customer and employee experience. And I wonder, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels to me certainly that is the key trend driving this convergence. We're seeing UC platforms embed more contact center features, innovations like agentic AI, reshaping how businesses think about experience more broadly. But what would you say is driving this convergence right now and how it's changing the way organizations approach both customer and employee experiences?
Yeah, I think at the root of it, it is that need for experience kind of centricity, if you will, and that focus on that both internally and externally. Obviously, as we move through the generations, folks have different ways that they like to engage and do things, and especially with some of the younger generations, the idea of picking up a phone and talking to an agent is scary. They'd rather cancel the service or live with the terrible service, neither of which is a good outcome for the organization. So, this need to change that experience, use technology like AI to be able to deliver a much better experience really is at the heart of, I think, what's driving this. And as I said, not just the customer, it's even the internal employee experience side. So that's driving a lot of it. The need for AI and cloud services is obviously, as like everything in our world, a big driver here now. And again, it's maturing enough to where it can start delivering, real business value and outcomes, and therefore making it, again, a reason to really start to make the investment and make these shifts. With the agents being able to handle tasks, interact with customers or employees, automate things, make things happen much faster. Obviously, can be great from a cost savings, but also just a much better experience. As you said, with the cloud maturity as well, these platforms are maturing, a lot more integrations, a lot more scalable, and that's really, I think, accelerating this as well. And like everything in our world, cost is a real factor in people's budgets and how they want to look at businesses today. And so, again, looking at dual stacks, dual siloed, segmented data, these are all things that really are showstoppers from a cost, but also if you do want to unlock AI, you can't have your data segmented and all those pieces. So, I think there's a lot of things kind of coming together that's really just kind of forcing the hand here a little bit. But I think the biggest part of that is the expectations from the market, the customers, the employees of a much better experience. They have it in their consumer life. Why can't they have it in their professional life as well?
And central to that better experience, we're not just talking about feature consolidation here. It's about streamlining operations, automating processes, scaling genuinely great experiences. What do you see as the biggest strategic gains for IT and business leaders who embrace this shift?
Yeah, I think you've touched on some of those there. I mean, the streamlined operations is obviously massive from a cost perspective, not having to duplicate licenses, duplicate teams that are managing platforms, not having to, do simple things like patching and upgrades. And, even in the cloud service where some of that stuff goes away, there's still the operational tasks that go with, monitoring that, managing that. So that kind of frees up those IT resources for other strategic work. I think that automation at scale is big as well. If you do want to, take more of that workload away from the agents and things like that, that becomes a big part of that. So automating those workflows, messaging, and driving ultimately again a better experience through improved responsiveness and efficiency. I touched on the unified data. I mean, I think that's a big one. If if you can give your contact center agents, whether they're AI or real agents, access to better data, better resources within the organization, then that obviously clearly can help drive faster, better decisions as well as improved experiences. And again, a lot with technology today, with the modern stuff, you're going to drive faster innovation cycles through getting those new features, trying out new things, being able to deliver that. And ultimately, this leads to a competitive edge. You'll be able to, if you're delivering a much better experience to your customers, to the market, um, you know, that's a big thing people look for these days. It's not so much just price or features of the product or things like that. I think there is more of a focus on what's my aftercare experience like, and people will pay more for products that deliver a better experience, after the fact. So I think those are some of the strategic gains. But I think one really interesting point that we've started to see as well is some of the tools, from as you converge UC and CC, we're seeing kind of more down market move with some of these capabilities. So again, contact center used to be this kind of behemoth, expensive, and that would limit who you kind of put within the sphere of influence, so to speak. It was a big decision to say we want to license somebody and make them available to the customer, so to speak. So that would mean a lot of maybe experts or things like that were left out of the equation. Whereas you move that down market, it makes it far easier to incorporate more of the organization as far as escalation paths, getting answers to questions maybe through IM in the background. A lot of things like that that again can help drive that and bring that customer experience into the wider organization. It's no longer just a, oh, there's a contact center team over there that does that. It really has to permeate through the whole organization. And some of these tools and the way that they're approaching it and enable that to become much more of a reality.
Absolutely. And as you outlined there, that helps businesses that are increasingly outcome focused rather than feature focused. That really, these types of features really illustrate the tangible ROI, both financially and experientially, in that sense. But of course, making that transition from siloed systems to a unified platform is no small feat at all. How do VOSS tools like Discover, Migrate, Automate, and Insights support business leaders in navigating that shift smoothly and strategically?
Yeah, of course, it's the most exciting bit for me. But yeah, I mean, it's been an area that we've been, moving into and doing more and more work around. And really our whole product portfolio is supporting helping move that shift. I talked earlier about the kind of fear of uncertainty and disruption. And that's really where the discovery and migrate really help, come in and address that. So much like we do that for the UC space, we can start mapping that out for the contact center side as well. So what call paths are being used, what IVRs are actually accessed, and why it's built, and which ones are dead call flows that grew organically that never got removed. So really kind of demystifying and understanding what it is you actually do have, what's being used, what's delivering value, I think is a big part of addressing that fear of uncertainty. Once you know what you have, what you've got, it's much easier to map out a path, forward and where you're going to go. And that's, then can lead into the migration, which can obviously help automate, the transition of those, call flows of those agents from the legacy or from the original system over to the target system. And then once you're, kind of migrated up and running, whether you've done that through our tools or, have already, kind of started that journey, the automate side can help you then kind of drive efficiency through, onboarding through policies and templates and things like that. So, in integrating into business processes like onboarding, the agent into the organization as a whole, onboarding new users into different skills groups or different parts of the organization, knowing that, maybe these employees can help support this area of expertise within your organization and can be a resource agents can call on. So again, bringing that convergence together of managing the UC side, managing the contact center side, and managing how the two interact, can be a big part of what's managed through that automation space. Um, and then with insights, we've been expanding out, what we can kind of monitor and the analytics there to give you more of that insight. Of course, we've been doing that on the UC side and have quite in-depth details there. And so as the systems converge, a lot of that will naturally come through. But we've been expanding that out also to look at some, contact center specific loads. But even looking at what I call light contact center, so things like using call queues and things within Teams to maybe mirror a light contact center, where you might have supervisors managing those queues with the call queues app and things like that. So again, being able to even just take some of that analytical data that from the UC space and present it in a contact center way, where it's being used or where those capabilities are being used in that context can be a big help there. And then ultimately, all this kind of, leads to that strategic enablement of being able to help them get over that hump, so to speak, of planning that, converging their resources and building a delightful user and employee experience.
Terrific. Well, the one final question before I let you go, Bill. For business leaders that are watching this video and wondering how to get started, what would you say is the first step towards a more unified and intelligent UC&CC strategy? And how can they assess where they are today versus where they need to be?
Yeah, I think there's a few key things in there, and obviously some people will be at different points on this journey, but I mean, for me, I think step one is really knowing your current estate and what you have and assessing that. So, is it up to scratch? Is it meeting your needs, or is it, stuck together with a bunch of band-aids and people are just making do with what they've got? And that's where things like Discover, our Discover tools and things can help, piece that together and help you understand that. And then I think another critical one in there is defining your experience vision for the organization. So, having a clear view of that outcome that you want in terms of both CX and EX, and how the technology can enable it, because that should really be, to overuse the term, but the North Star, if you will, for the organization. And that should really drive, what decisions you're making in terms of which technologies you use. Do you make that transition? How do you how do you set up the new solution and systems to best support those outcomes? And then step three is ultimately building out that roadmap. How are you going to get from what you have to that final destination, if you will, and what steps need to go there? And a lot of that can start small, right? Prioritizing high impact areas, and some of this has started to happen already because of COVID and other external influences. But choosing certain areas that you want that are going to deliver the biggest bang for the buck, either in experience or an operational cost, and targeting those, and then using, tools like Migrate and Automate to help ensure that you're kind of rolling those out in a controlled and kind of phased and known manner. Um, and I think the final point, and this, kind of goes again to an earlier point of, it's really shifting the mindset of the organization, right? It's no longer that, hey, customer service is this other team, that's all they do. Everyone in the organization needs to buy into that kind of experience vision and be tied into delivering ultimately that great user experience out to the end customer. So, I think that's another big mindset shift that we're seeing organizations go through that goes along with that defining the experience vision. So I think those are the key points for folks to get started on this. And I think there's plenty of folks doing that and making some good headway. And I look forward to helping a lot of them do it.
Terrific. Thanks, Bill. I'm sure those businesses are. I think, yeah, that outcome focused, experience focused mindset is absolutely critical for delivering everything you'd want from this strategy. That's all we've got time for today, unfortunately, but it's been a terrific session. So thank you, Bill, for being here,
Yeah, thanks again. And yeah, look forward to our next catch up sometime.
as do I. And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share on social media. And we'll see you next time. I've been Kieran Devlin of UC Today. Thanks for watching.